Chris Peters back on the Western Hotline. Chris, we'll see how far we can go here. I want to go right into the prospects if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you coming to the draft, by the way?
No. So
okay.
I'm in Chicago right now. We're doing a live draft show with the Athletics. So,
funny.
Yeah. So,
who does not have a first-round pick now, which is funny, or at least they don't have the 4th pick. So,
we're not doing it for the Blackhawks.
Right,
so.
right. So, on a couple of the individual prospects, I've been staring at Ivor Stenberg for the last couple of days since the Sabres made this trade. Starting with him, one, how good a prospect is he? Like, to the point where even maybe number 1 wasn't crazy for him? And 2, is there any chance you think that he would fall because of what? San Jose, I know, needs defensemen, and Vancouver might be in a tricky spot because obviously the coach's son is a top 5 pick.
Yeah, very, very bizarre kind of circumstances. I think, a lot of us felt, and I think the reason that Chicago made the trade was that Stenberg was probably going to be the pick for San Jose. And so that's at least what people are thinking the Sharks telegraphed, in terms of making that move, trading William Eklund and then acquiring, the what they got in terms of, the defenseman and everything else. So the assumption was that they would probably be picking Stenberg. But in terms of how good of a prospect he is, I think there are definitely teams that have him ahead of Gavin McKenna on their list. There are definitely teams that feel like he's no worse than the number 2 prospect in this class. And the reason being is that he had one of the most productive seasons by an NHL draft eligible in the Swedish Hockey League. The only 2 guys that had more points than him in their draft season were the Sedin twins. So, so there's that too. And also, we've seen him at the World Championship. We've seen him at the World Juniors. He's been a top player. And so he is probably, while Gavin McKenna is the more offensively gifted of the 2 players, Stenberg is the more complete between the 2 players. And yes, they're both wings and they're both sub 6 foot players. And so that does give teams a little, how much do you really build around those guys? But Stenberg is an exceptional talent and he's proven it at every step of the way. So I think he's a really impressive young player, a guy that would help anybody. And as far as what I think, I kind of doubt that he'll be there at 4. Because I don't think Chicago would have moved the pick if they were confident he would be there at 4.
Right. In terms of if that is the case and he's gone or the Sabres don't move up or anything, and it goes forward at the start, would you feel like, all right, you're the Sabres, Byram's gone, I know your top 3D are great, but would that be a position where you'd think you just take the best defenseman available?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And like let's say it does go 3 forwards. To me, Chase Reid is the number 1 defenseman in this class. He's a right shot. He's got size. He's going to Michigan State. He's probably going to need a year, maybe 2 at Michigan State. I think where you're at as the Sabres right now, you're not necessarily looking for, immediate help. It would be nice to get, but I don't think you're going to get it in that range. And then, you get the player that I think very well could be one of the top defensemen, not just in this draft, but really has a chance to be a star guy at the NHL level and in Chase Reid. And, he's a guy that's had a very unique development path. He's kind of only on the front end of some of his, most elite hockey. He joined the OHL halfway through last season and then came in and was outstanding this year and one of the highest minutes, in terms of usage, played about more than anybody in the OHL this season. I think he's a tremendous athlete. And you say, okay, well, we've got, Dahlin, Power, the others, Samuelson, all those guys. But this is another guy that you could really start building a juggernaut defense there, potentially as soon as 2 seasons from now. And I think that's a good place to be. There are other options. There are other really good defensemen. And I think if, depending on what the Sabres are really looking for, there's a lot of different guys that you can talk about. But to me, Chase Reid is the guy. And if it goes 3 forwards, I would very quickly pick up Chase Reid.
Yeah. Does he also fit maybe perfectly what the Sabres last year with their blue line? It was, you guys jump up in the play, up and down the ice. Like, we trust your mobility to be involved. And I feel like that sounds like what Reid is. Is he more that than the next couple defensemen beyond him, or are there other defensemen at 4 that would kind of fit that style of play for the Sabres?
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of quality offensive defensemen guys that, are quality 2-way guys that have a really good offensive game, including Carson Karls and Daxon Rudolph and and others. But, I think for me, the most dynamic of the group is Reid. I think he does the best job of getting pucks through. He's got a tremendous shot. He's really just a great skater. Reads the play really well in terms of the offense. He played for Team USA at the World Juniors this year, and kind of coming in, we weren't sure exactly what he would end up being. Cole Hudson gets hurt, and he stepped into being their number one defenseman, and it was pretty seamless. And I just think that he's so the athletic toolkit that he has is so enticing that that's the thing where you're like, okay, well, he's got that plus the offense. As he continues to round out his defensive game, continues to get stronger and better in that regard. I mean, he has a chance to be a top pairing guy down the road here. So, I think he's really an exceptional talent.
What would you say is the next guy for you at that position? Carson Karls, as you mentioned.
Yeah, Carson Karls, really. I mean, he's probably the most complete of the D guys at this point because his defense is really strong. He's a physical guy. He's able to make a lot of plays as well, and he's a really good skater. So, I mean, he fits a lot of the different profiles just with a better defensive ability. I think the offensive upside for him is lower than it is for Reid, but at the same time, this is a guy that, produced 70 points this year and showed that he can really score as well. So, I think he's going to North Dakota. He's probably going to be there. My guess is for a year and then into the NHL. So he might have a slightly shorter timeline with him. But he also, he checks a lot of boxes, and there are teams that definitely have Karls as their number one defenseman too.
Chris Peters on the West Her Hotline, Flow Hockey, lots of great content as the draft is approaching, and that fourth pick. How many? I mean, I'm sure the names we've talked about already, especially Reid, of course, would be this. How many names do you feel like are defendable for them to take at the fourth pick?
Yeah, there's quite a few actually. I mean, I think that when we look at this draft, you've kind of got your top three and depending top three players, and that's actually typically Reid, Stenberg, and McKenna. And then after that, it's like Malhotra and the next group. I think there's a lot of defensible names there, including Albert Smits, who is, probably the most NHL ready player of anybody in this draft outside of maybe Stenberg. And he is, he played pro hockey in Finland. He also played in Germany this year. He played at the Olympics. He's a guy that has the size, the strength, the physical maturity. He is definitely a guy that I would look at as an option, especially since his timeline for the NHL is pretty short. You could probably even get him into Rochester right away next year, maybe even into your NHL lineup for various stretches of the season, depending on if you have the availability. So that's a defensible one. I look at other guys, Jackson Rudolph, some teams have him high, and he's the more offensive of anybody. His defending still needs a lot of work, but he's a guy that I think is defensible in that range as well. And then there are others where you say, okay, well, it might be a little bit of a reach, but still you can make a case like a Wyatt Cullen, who has, probably the most dynamic player outside of the next, outside of the forwards that we think will be gone. And then there's still the chance that maybe everybody's kind of telegraphing Malhotra to Vancouver and it doesn't happen that way. But if he's there, I mean, all of a sudden, okay, well, we've got some centers in the mix here, but here's a guy that's 6'2", really good two-way guy, can probably, fill a lot of different holes and gaps. That would also be a really strong pick. So really the Sabres are kind of left with nothing but good options, because I do think that while I'm not enamored with the very top of this draft, I think that the guys that are in that, like, there's a lot of like guys that could go 2, 3 in most years, or 4, so you have a lot of good options available. So I think it's a really great place to be. It's certainly a position of strength. And there's always the option too, where it's like, hey, if a team really is desperate, could you flip the fourth again? Like that's the crazy thing is there something more immediate that you can potentially get out of that?
Right. Doesn't Malhotra have to be the third pick? I mean, I guess that'll be what Vancouver's doing right now, right? Like Manny Malhotra, they're going to want to know, like, you're going to be willing to coach this guy the same way that anybody else, because they know he's your son, but if you're bringing a young player into the lineup like that, I just wonder what the Vancouver management would think of that, whether they would think of that as a positive, or maybe they would be worried about the dynamic there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something that they probably even considered before hiring Manny, because that was, I believe the Canucks have been in on Malhotra, before they knew where they were picking in the draft, in terms of their what they would like out of the pick. And the fact that he is a center, the fact that he is a good two-way guy, and I think there's reason to look at that. I think with Manny and Caleb together, like, it is a weird dynamic. It's not something we see very much in the NHL. I think the other thing too is you can't really know, like, the shelf life of an NHL coach is so short, too, where it's like you kind of have to prioritize the player over the coach. So if you really believe that Caleb Malhotra is going to be that top level guy, then you take him and that's what you do. You say, all right, that's our guy. He's going to be a long-term center for us. He's going to probably play longer for us than his dad coaches for us. That's going to have to be okay. It's an odd dynamic, but I think because of the familiarity of the Sedins that are now very heavily involved in this process, with both the family, the Manny, the kid as well, that I think helps their cause.
Chris Peters from Flow Hockey with us for just a couple more minutes. Undersized players are always fun to talk about as the draft approaches. What are your thoughts on Viggo Bjorck?
I love Viggo Bjorck, and I probably should have mentioned him as one of the guys that is totally defensible at number 4. He is a 5'9" center, which is absolutely, not what a lot of teams are looking for in a top 6 center. However, he's incredibly competitive. He probably has the best hockey sense in the draft. He played professionally all season. He is just the hockey sense on him just makes me really excited about what he can be as an NHL player. But he also has this incredible motor and compete level. And obviously we've seen that with Zach Benson, and what he's done in his young career and how that competitiveness and that motor can really, push a player forward. I think that Viggo has something similar. And I think you also look at the Carolina Hurricanes, you say, okay, well, they just won a Stanley Cup with Logan Stankoven as a real driver on their second line. How do we, can we do that? Because I think Viggo very much has that capability to be a Logan Stankoven style player. I think the only question is his offense as strong as, a player like Stankoven who could be a real scorer down the stretch. And I think that it is. It's just, there's still a little bit more that needs to be seen in terms of that. But I mean, I think, he's one of my favorite players in the draft, and it's just, you look at the size and you just look at the hockey sense and the compete, and you're just saying that guy's going to play.
Yeah, as you were laying that out, I mean, you mentioned him, but it sounds like there might just be another Zach Benson in this draft.
Yeah,
but he's
absolutely. I mean, I very, very much. I mean, like, biggest reason I was so high on Zach was because of that motor and that compete, and that's something that Viggo has in spades.
All right. At the 20th pick, are there interesting names right now that you think are going around that area?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I think that the variance is so much where, there could be a guy that slips a little bit further than you expect, and you say, oh, wow, there he is at 20. Like, that's a real possibility. You never really know. Some names to just kind of keep in mind to look at. Adam Novotny, good two-way winger, 6'1", has a lot of physical strength, had 30 goals in the OHL this season. And, I just love the way that he plays. I think that he can fit into any kind of spot. If say the Sabres end up going forward, there could be that second tier defenseman that's available in the 20 range. Guys like Tommy Blau, who's probably one of the best skaters in the draft, and really talented offensive defenseman who had 80 plus points in the QMJHL this year. And he's also committed to Michigan State, so he's a really interesting guy. On top of that, one player, with the trade of Alex Tuch, Maddox Dagenet is a guy that I feel like he's not quite as good a skater as Alex Tuch was, but he's a 6'4" player with high skill level, scores goals. He's listed as a center, but he probably plays wing at the NHL level. And that's a guy where I'm looking at just that size skill combo that really is enticing to me. So those are just a few of the names that I think are really reasonable to expect, in that range. There's the chance that some of them go in the teens or maybe a little bit later, but I think, there's really good options. I think 20, every first round starts kind of thinning out, but 20 is still a good spot to get some real value.
Yeah. And we'll wrap with this, Chris, because I think Sabre fans, and myself included, I mean, are expecting that they will at least try to trade one, if not even both, of those first-round picks, 20 especially, but there's a lot of smoke that even 4 is in discussions. How many players, because this is a loaded offseason. Like, there's a lot of big names being talked about. Robertson, there's a report in the last couple minutes about like what the price would be for him, and Matthew Nyes and Larkin, Hellebuyck. I mean, there's a lot of them. How many of the names that you see being out there do you feel like are worth flipping the 4th pick for in a trade package?
Yeah, I mean, I think like really any of the guys you just mentioned, I even
Hellebuyck?
I think that yeah, especially Hellebuyck.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is like really at this point with the Sabres, you're in win now mode. You just had the season that you had. How much does this pick really matter to you in a couple of years? Whereas you can get somebody, you obviously want to have somebody with some term. You want to have somebody that's going to be able to be around for a little bit. But I do think that you can really be aggressive with that pick, given, the success that you've had recently. Either way, I think they have nothing but good options because I do think there's a lot of intrigue in this pick. The question is going to be like for teams like Winnipeg and others is like, how much of a step back are you willing to take where you're going to take on futures versus, maybe having to do something a little bit more. I think Hellebuyck obviously is going to require a larger package than just a 4th overall, just because you got a Vezina Trophy winning goalie, but there's a lot of other things that you can do. So I think those Sabres will continue to be aggressive and look at all those options because they're in a real position of strength right now.
Chris Peters on the Western Hotline at Chris M. Peters, Flow Hockey, a must follow as we approach the draft. Thanks, Chris, for efforting to come on with us. We were really glad we could get you in here.
Yeah, so glad to do it. Sorry about the phone issues, but appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Chris Peters, and I was very glad we could get that in. And he had a little bit of a different attitude on Hellebuyck than I've even felt from others and myself. Like, I think I even said it yesterday. I'd like to trade the 4th pick for a Jason Robertson or even a Matthew Nyes. But even I think I'd have to draw the line in Hellebuyck before I'd trade the 4th pick. And Chris is like, no, Hellebuyck would be the guy I would do it for. So I respect that. I mean, he would make the Sabres. I want to say they're not right now. I think he would make them an instant Stanley Cup contender. I don't know if I want to say that about them after losing Tuch and Byram. I might be willing to say it tomorrow when they do whatever they do. I'd want to put it in 2 ways because, the offseason's incomplete and everybody knows that. Right now, I wouldn't want to say they're a Stanley Cup contender. My guess is by the time they play a hockey game, we're going to think they're a Stanley Cup contender. There.